I wake up already inside the silence. Not the calm kind, the kind that comes after something irreversible has been said out loud and cannot be taken back. My name is Sergio Mattarella, President of Italy, and this morning my name enters rooms before I do, carefully, defensively, like a fragile object people aren't sure how to touch anymore. The scandal is not hidden. It is already printed, translated, debated. In an official address at the beginning of 2022, as Russia moved toward war and then crossed into it, I compared its actions to historical expansionisms that once devastated Europe. I stated plainly that Italy stood with NATO and the European Union. I supported sanctions against Russia and assistance to Ukraine. I said invasion could not be justified by security or historical interests. For a president known for restraint, that tone was read as a rupture. By the time I open my phone, the rupture has a shape. Pro-Russian media accuse me of abandoning Italy's traditional balance. Headlines say I am echoing NATO talking points instead of defending national interest. Commentators use words like alignment, obedience, loss of autonomy. On the other side, parts of the peace-oriented left accuse me of something else entirely, of closing doors, of destroying Italy's role as a bridge between East and West, of pushing the country into a conflict it did not need to enter. No investigation, no suspension. But pressure has weight even when it is procedural. Requests for clarification, carefully worded questions, invitations framed as concerns, silence where there used to be ease. And yet, the machinery still runs. Doors still open. People still stand when I enter. Security still adjusts its formation without asking. Staff still phrase sentences around what they think I might need or avoid. Power does not shut off just because the name attached to it has become sensitive. It becomes quieter, more strategic, more cautious. What unsettles me is not the criticism itself. It is how carefully everyone now speaks, as if my words have become hazardous materials, as if conversation must be insulated. I notice how pauses lengthen, how agreement is implied rather than spoken, how disagreement is rerouted through procedure. My reputation has altered the temperature of the room, even when no one mentions it. Charm still works. Authority still functions. Compliance still arrives on time. But now it does so with gloves on. And that is the moment I understand the real shift. When accountability becomes abstract, even clarity starts to feel dangerous. 2. I spend the day moving inside a narrowed version of reality. Every action has a perimeter now. Not written, just understood. The first meeting is with advisors who no longer advise so much as pre-edit my existence. The room is quiet in a way that feels rehearsed. They don't ask what I want to say. They ask what I must not. Words like Russia, war, NATO, mediation sit on the table like objects no one wants to touch. I notice how often sentences begin with, "Perhaps it would be better if," and end unfinished. Caution has become a shared language. I make a call I am not expected to make, not to a foreign leader, not to the press. I call a civil society group that has publicly criticized me, peace activists who accused my speech of closing diplomatic doors. The call is private, routine. It lasts 8 minutes. By noon, it is reported as a signal. By early afternoon, it is framed as a course correction. By evening, it is treated as a fracture within the institutional line. Nothing, I said, survives intact. I attend a scheduled ceremony. Neutral, cultural, no geopolitics. I speak about the Constitution, about responsibility. I avoid every forbidden noun. Still, headlines appear within minutes. Mattarella speaks amid tensions. Commentators parse pauses. A hand gesture becomes intention. Silence becomes strategy. Even restraint is read as positioning. At lunch, I refuse a briefing. This alone causes a ripple. Staff exchange looks. A refusal used to mean time management. Now it means something else. Someone leaks that I declined an update on Eastern Europe. That phrasing travels faster than the truth, which is that I simply wanted an hour without talking points. The correction never catches up. In the afternoon, I do something deliberately unsafe for this role. I walk. No motorcade, minimal escort, no announcement. Just a short route I've taken before, now transformed by attention. Phones come out. Someone films from a cafe. Within minutes, speculation appears online. Unscheduled movement, symbolic distancing, calculated visibility. A walk becomes a message I did not write. PR intervenes before I return. They don't scold, they contextualize. They remind me how optics function differently now. I hear the subtext. Unpredictability is a liability when your name is radioactive. They draft statements I don't plan to release, just in case. Contingency has replaced communication. Later, I sign documents that would have drawn no attention weeks ago. Today, analysts scan the signatures for alignment. A routine appointment becomes proof of loyalty or betrayal, depending on the outlet. One paper claims I am doubling down. Another claims I am retreating under pressure. The same act sustains opposite realities simultaneously. I notice how fear travels faster than facts. Staff are not afraid of me. They are afraid for the institution, of escalation, of misinterpretation, of headlines that turn procedure into provocation. I can feel how power tightens when it senses risk, not by stopping, but by narrowing what is allowed. In the evening, I draft remarks I will never deliver. Not because they are extreme, because they are clear. Clarity has become the dangerous thing. Ambiguity is safer. It gives everyone room to project their version of stability. Truth spoken plainly now feels like an act of aggression, not because it is false, but because it cannot be easily bent. As the day ends, I understand something I didn't before. Scandal doesn't remove power. It changes its texture. Influence still works, but it warps everything it touches. Meaning stretches. Intention fractures. Even honesty becomes suspect, simply because it comes from this name at this moment. I know this authority is temporary. That is why I keep pressing against its edges. Not to fix the narrative, not to redeem anything, but to watch, in real time, how fragile truth becomes once trust is no longer assumed, and how quickly systems learn to protect themselves by softening reality instead of facing it. 3. The last hours of the day are the quietest and also the most crowded. Nothing is happening, and yet everything is being watched. I sit with documents I no longer need to read. Their presence is symbolic now. What matters is not what I decide, but how every decision will be interpreted tomorrow by people who have already chosen what it means. The scandal has not removed my authority. It has placed it under glass. Visible, untouchable, constantly examined for cracks. This is the cost for this person. Not loss of office, not formal punishment, but the permanent narrowing of movement. The awareness that every word has an afterlife longer than its intent. That silence is safer than accuracy. That precision invites damage. Fame, at this level, is no longer recognition. It is surveillance with manners. I feel it in the pauses before I speak, even now, alone. Sentences form automatically, then dissolve. I know which ones would travel badly. I know which ones would require 3 spokespersons and a clarification by morning. Self-censorship doesn't arrive as fear. It arrives as efficiency. You learn what costs too much energy to say. Power still exists, technically. I could call. I could intervene. I could shape outcomes at the margins. But I am also trapped by the shape I have become. the role is larger than the person inhabiting it. And after the scandal, the role tightens, like fabric pulled too far. I feel the influence fading before the identity does. This is the strange imbalance. The authority will pass, the presidency will end, but the name will not return to neutral. This person will always enter rooms with context attached, always be introduced with a clause, always be remembered for the moment restraint broke, not for the years it held. Tomorrow, I will return to my own life. But this life does not reset. Reputation does not decay at the same speed as power. It lingers, it hardens. It becomes a condition rather than an event. People will still argue about what was meant, about whether it was necessary, about whether it crossed an invisible line that only becomes visible after someone steps over it. What unsettles me is how easy it was to borrow this existence for one day. The access, the obedience, the way systems rearranged themselves around a name without asking who was inside it. And how unbearable it must be to live here indefinitely, knowing that every future action will be measured against a single moment that cannot be edited out. As the day closes, I don't feel relief. I feel awareness. I understand that power is uneven, that it is conditional, that it can be entered briefly and exited cleanly by someone like me, but not by the person whose face remains attached to its consequences. When I return to anonymity, it will not feel like freedom. It will feel like gravity returning to normal. And I will know that what I carried for a day, someone else carries as a permanent weight, long after the headlines move on, and long after the power itself has gone quiet. Disclaimer: this video is a fictional, satirical thought experiment. It does not represent the real thoughts, intentions, decisions, or private life of Sergio Mattarella, nor does it claim insight into his personal beliefs or internal experiences. All scenes and narration are imagined and constructed solely for the purpose of social commentary, examining how fame, scandal, power, and public perception interact under pressure. This work is not a biography, not a documentary, and not an accusation. It is an abstract narrative device intended to explore systems, not individuals.